Another day, another giant scam from a big financial institution. So let me walk you through this here. Bank of America faces hundreds of millions in fines over fake accounts and junk fees. Bank of America is facing hundreds of millions in fines for an alleged pattern of illegal and predatory practices against customers, reported CNN on Tuesday. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau ordered Bank of America to pay more than $100 million to customers and $90 million in penalties, reported Matt Egan. The Office of the Comptroller of the Currency also ordered Bank of America to pay $60 million in fines. Specifically, the company is accused of creating fake accounts in customers' names, illegally charging extra junk fees, and not delivering on advertised credit card rewards. Bank of America wrongfully withheld credit card rewards, double-dipped on fees, and opened accounts without consent, said Consumer Financial Protection Bureau Director Rohit Chopra. These practices are illegal and undermine customer trust. The CFPB will be putting an end to these practices across the banking system. The accusation is similar to the Wells Fargo scandal of 2016. I remember that at the time, when the bank was found to have fraudulently opened millions of accounts in customers' names in order to charge them fees they never agreed to. The bank paid $3 billion in 2020 to resolve the scandal, but faces other ongoing accusations from its own employees, including a pattern of racial bias. The Biden administration has declared as one of its priorities a crackdown on so-called junk fees across several industries, where companies ranging from banks to airlines to hotels, where the full price of the service is obscured and fees are hidden until after the purchase, a practice that traps consumers into paying more than they were led to believe, and that makes it hard to compare pricing between competitors. There's a couple takeaways from this story. First, let's talk about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is the absolute best thing that the government has done in the modern era by a mile and a half. It's returned tens of billions, or potentially even over $100 billion back to defrauded customers. This is the government doing what the government should actually do. Now, by the way, this was actually Elizabeth Warren's brainchild, and it was a way to rein in Wall Street, rein in financial institutions, rein in the big banks, and stop their basically fraud and abuse. So just quickly, shout out to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau for doing a phenomenal job here. Now, by the way, this is another area where you got to keep it real. Under the Trump administration, he absolutely destroyed the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. He basically handcuffed them and made sure they couldn't do their job. But under the Biden administration, you have the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau back to doing decent work, where they're looking out for regular people. So that's the first point on the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. On the second point, look, this is par for the course among these banks. This is par for the course on Wall Street. Like, this is what they do. So this isn't like a little oopsie. Oh, we accidentally opened an account in your name that you didn't agree to and use that to double charge you on your fees, to nickel and dime you. It's not an oopsie. It's not a mistake. This was intentional. This was a matter of policy that came from the top. So they were nickel and diming and screwing their own customers repeatedly as a matter of standard operating procedure. And here's the part that drives me crazy. I'm going to guess that the fines that they're paying here don't even equal the amount of money they made from the fraudulent practices they committed. Let me repeat that. The amount of money that they're fined here likely is not even more than what they made doing these scam practices. So you know what that means, ladies and gentlemen? That means they are incentivized to continue to do this. If they know, hey, I commit a crime, it's like a robber steals $1,000, and then the government goes, hey, that's wrong. You better give me back $800. But they stole $1,000. And by the way, even just giving back the $1,000, is that the proper punishment if somebody steals $1,000? Or should it be like, you got to give the money back, and hey, get comfy behind those bars because you're going to be there for a little bit? What's the right way to approach this? And stop and think about it. When it comes to crimes of regular people, they do throw the book at you. They do lock you up. And look, in many instances, it's fair. If somebody commits murder or rape or something like that, everybody's like, yeah, get locked up, right? But when it comes to white-collar crime, it's like not even a blip on the radar. Nobody cares. And nobody's calling to be tough on crime. Well, I'm here, and I want to be tough on crimes like this. Come on, man. This is like, honestly, the amount of the negative impact on people's lives from white-collar criminals is probably above and beyond non-white-collar criminals. I guess blue-collar criminals, or whatever you want to call them. Because think about it. Even like the 2008 subprime mortgage crisis and Great Recession, you literally had millions of people lose their homes because of the policies of Wall Street. Because they wanted to make a buck in the short term and didn't care about the long-term viability of what they were doing. Because they hawked these predatory ballooning rate mortgages where they knew people wouldn't be able to afford this in 2 years, 3 years, or whatever. They shouldn't have been allowed to do that. They were giving out loans without doing any sort of check of the credit history or employment history. And they were giving out these massive loans that they should have even given out. There should have been more regulation. Again, they were doing it because they could make money in the short term and then package it together and sell it off to somebody else. So it's not their problem anymore. Hey, I made my profit. It was a giant scam of a system. As Bernie Sanders often says, fraud is a business model on Wall Street. We saw this with Goldman Sachs too. Goldman Sachs would tell people, hey, you got to get in on these packages, these mortgage packages. They're really great. They're rated AAA. So they'd dupe over their clients. And then on the other hand, they would turn around and bet on those same packages to fail. So you're making money in two ways. Selling the product, saying it's great, and then betting on the product failing. That's crazy. And they get away with it. Look, it is long past time. You got to start locking up some of these Wall Street criminals. You got to start locking them up. It's weird, man. It's almost like we have these two categories, violent crime and nonviolent crime. And it's like, it's actually a hell of a lot more complicated than that, right? Because there's this stuff in a gray area. And the gray area is like, what if you made a decision to make a profit in the short term, and the consequences of that are millions of people lose their homes, and you knew that was going to be the consequences of it, but you did it anyway? What's that? Fraud on a mass scale that negatively impacts hundreds of thousands or millions of people? What's that? Is that nonviolent? I don't know. I don't think I'd call that nonviolent. Yeah, you didn't hit anybody in the face or whatever, but it's sort of in this weird gray area. By the way, in the same way, to be fair, that like rioting, right? Property damage. It's not nonviolent and it's not violent. It's sort of in this weird middle area where it's like kind of violent. And honestly, you can even think of a scenario where something in that gray area, the like semi-violent crime, that it could actually be worse than a violent crime. Like if somebody punches somebody in the face, right, and then they get charged for it, that's bad. It's bad, and there should be consequences for that, etc. But what's worse, somebody who did that, or the Wall Street banksters who committed fraud, knew they were committing fraud, screwed over their own customers, and got away with it, and made hundreds of millions of dollars in the process? What's worse? I'll leave that up to you, right? But like, we're not tough enough on these guys. And I would, if I was president, I would definitely beef up the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and basically let them go to town, man. I would let them go to town. By the way, I talked about this before. This agency actually helped me. One time I lost my credit card. It was a Discover credit card. It was in the city after a night of drinking, New York City. And so the next day I called and like wanted to get a new one, cancel the old one, whatever. And they said, well, why don't you also get identity theft protection? So you don't have to worry about this. If you lose it again, you could rest easy knowing that, like, nobody's going on a spending spree or whatever. And I was hungover and I didn't think about it. I was like, okay, sure, whatever. Well, how much could it be? $5 a month, $10 a month, whatever. So got that protection. Well, fast forward like 3 or 4 years or 5 years, I get a check in the mail from the government for, I don't remember like hundreds of dollars or $1,000 or something like that. And it was because they did an investigation and learned that Discover's identity theft protection was totally bogus. They weren't doing anything. They were just charging money and they had no service. It was just a lie. So I was very thankful for the government in that moment. That's good regulation. That's what the government should do. And again, I propose to you, should the person who came up with that idea and knew they were lying and knew it was a fraudulent scheme, should they go to prison? I say yes. How else are you going to stop these brazen scams, man? How else are you going to stop them? You're not going to stop them. We're going to have a total scam economy. We probably already do. So anyway, Bank of America caught yet again, along with Wells Fargo. We know HSBC was also doing business with like drug cartels and terrorists and the Iranian government and all people they literally were not allowed to do it with. This is what these guys do. Who's really in control? Who's really in charge in this country? When you commit a crime and then the fine is not even enough to equal the profits you made from the crime, who's really in charge in this country? Is it the politicians? Or is it these mega corporations and financial institutions? I think we all know the answer. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.